Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Oh, that was nice. Thanks for being here this evening for another Monday night workshop. It's been a while since it feels like it's been a while because I didn't do the last one. So, I apologize, do not have the last Monday night workshop Sphere Part 2 up on the website yet. So that's something we're working on. But let me quickly go through our calendar. So March 8th, which is this Saturday coming up, we're doing the Enneagram, the Impact Training the Enneagram Part 3. So you don't have to have attended Part 1 and 2 to attend Part 3. We'll do a quick little review. However, if you haven't attended either one of them, you're going to need to call the office and fill out the test so that we don't take the time, because it takes about an hour to fill that thing out. The next Omega 1 is March 13th through the 16th. That's next Thursday, not this Thursday coming up, but next Thursday next week, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, it's next week. Wow. And I will be doing the Omega 1 all by myself, so I'm excited about that. The Monday night workshop is on the 17th. Yay, St. Patrick's Day. We can all wear green. I was going to say bring in green beer, but don't do that. But we can all wear green. Do I own green? It doesn't matter. The Monday night, then the next Omega 1 in April, that will be the 4th through the 6th, and then April's Monday night workshops are the 7th and the 21st, and the Impact Training is on the 12th, which I don't know what I'm going to do yet. And then the Omega 2, the next Omega 2 is April 24th to the 27th. The next Omega 8 is August 22nd to the 31st. We had to cancel the last Omega 4. We had numbers up and then down and then up and then down, so when it finally was all said and done, we just didn't have enough to do a training, so we decided to cancel it and move everything forward, which is always difficult, especially for an Omega 4. We only do 2 of those a year. So this year we're only going to do 1 Omega 4 in August. So that gets me up to date and current with our calendar. Now, this evening, what I'd like to do is check and see how you guys are doing before I start chit-chatting. So how are you doing? Did you say fabulous?
Fabulous. Almost as good as you.
Oh, good. Thank you. You don't know if I'm doing good or not, but apparently I look like I'm doing good, don't I? Oh, good. I was telling Susan I had a little bit of a panic attack, because usually when I write my Monday night workshop, then I send it down in an email, and then I print a copy out for me, and I'll write notes. But today I was like, I got time, and so I put it on a thumb drive, and what I discovered and I didn't print it out because I figured we'll print it out when we get out here, but when we got down here, my husband says, there's no workshop on this thumb drive, there's only a picture. So I just copied the picture that I put in the workshop. That's what I brought down here. So I sat for a little while panicking, thinking, what was I supposed to talk about? So and then I calmed down and came up with what I think is pretty much the workshop. So I'm going to deliver to you what I think I wrote today, as much verbatim as I can. Obviously, we don't have a handout for you, so what I'll do is send the handout into the building tomorrow, and you can just call the office and ask them to send it to you. It's a PDF file, and they'll just send it to you so that you can get tonight's handout, because I'm funny that way. So this evening, I even had such a panic moment, I couldn't remember what the topic was, like the title. I was like, what did I write for the title? It was the internal world. Is that right?
Yeah.
It was the internal world. I should have just went online and checked the newsletter. So the internal world. What I've been doing, for those of you who know, lately I've been scouring through George's material. I've been working on Omega 8, so I've been looking through a lot of his material, and I actually have my own private collection of stuff. Back in the 90s, when he first delivered Monday night workshops, he didn't hand out anything. He would have his own notes, and that was it. So you came, you listened, and you left, and you never got a handout. Well, I have his notes. So I collected as many of his notes as I could. So I found this one in 1997 that he had put together on the internal world, and it was about 9 pages. So I thought, oh, that's good. That's a good 2-part section right there. following George's material is sometimes difficult because I'm not in his mindset, so I'm not really sure where he's going. And then with his notes, he's very cute. He's classically will do the writing, and then he'll write along here, and then along here, and then sometimes he writes upside down and circles it. So I'm not sure where he was going and whatnot, so I have to decipher, which isn't bad because then it makes more practical sense to me, so when I'm delivering it, it's more my material rather than what he was thinking. So I kind of just take it as his seeds. So he gave me the foundation of what I'm going to deliver tonight. It's not a new topic, but it's intriguing. There's some things that he said that I really liked, and that's why it brought my attention to bring this to you tonight. So, the first thing I want to talk about is the internal world. Actually, what I'll do is I'll have you guys, I will have you guys sit and find somebody that you're going to chit-chat with, and I want you to discuss with your buddy, what do you consider the internal world to be? So have a conversation of what you think the internal world is. Go ahead. All right, I'm going to interrupt you. Give me a couple of words or phrases that you would use to describe the internal world. Thoughts? What else?
Intuition.
Intuition. See your eyes. Intuition.
Emotion.
I heard two, so give me
Emotion.
emotions. What else?
Imagination.
Imagination.
Beliefs.
Beliefs.
Perception.
Perception. Anything else? Memories?
Things you don't show people.
Like
I don't know.
Personal.
Fears.
fears would be a good example.
Yeah.
So personal, we can say personal, so private,
Heartfelt.
heartfelt? Okay, heartfelt.
Fantasy.
Fantasy. Now, I'm going to stop right there. How many people know for certain that this is a definition of the inner realm? Nobody. Which is a good example of what we do in the inner realm. We attempt to describe things that are not describable. Come on down. So, now what I want you to do is have a conversation with your buddy on what do you think the external world is. So define the external world. All right, I'm going to interrupt you. So give me your definition of what the external world is.
The unknown.
Unknown. Okay.
The three-dimensional world.
Three-dimensional world. I'm just going to say the 3D.
Okay.
Self-creation. Self-creation. So you're even stumped more in the external world where you live most of your time. All right, so I'm going to put the five senses, because the five senses connect us to the external world. Our sight, sound, touch, hearing, smell, and taste. All of that gives us the experience of the external realm. The external realm, we could say everything that's physical is in the external realm. Physical. In the external realm, we have reactions. We have science. And of course, religion, which most people would think is on the internal realm, but it's not. Science and religion. You know what these two are both based on? Why do we exist and where are we going after we exist? Both of them are. They're both searching for the same answer, just in a different way of doing it. So we have science and religion. Finances are out here in the external realm. Finances. Health is out here. Spelling is out here in the external realm. So on the external realm, we have what George calls our lower centers. Now, remember the electromagnetic spectrum up there? We talked about everything vibrates. Everything is a vibration. So our physical being is a simple vibration of the totality of me. I have 7 levels: physical, emotional, mental, intuitive, admin, magnetic, and divine. So the lower centers are the physical, emotional, and mental. So if we look over here, we notice that some of the things that you wrote down for inner world maybe not be inner world. For example, thoughts may not be inner world because they're connected to the external world. Our emotions, what you're thinking of things that are inside, typically, well, naturally, because I said internal world. But what I want to do is give you a different definition of the inner and the outer. So our intuition could be internal world. Imagination, definitely inner world. Our belief systems are our internal perceptions. Memories are connected to the external world, the events that we have gone through. So this really goes with external. Our fears are connected to the external world. Heartfelt, I'm going to say that comes from compassion and heart. I'm going to say that's the internal. And fantasy, of course, is the internal. Over here, the unknown, well, the physical, yeah, we may not know everything, but if we use the 5 senses, we can touch, taste, feel, hear, see, and smell it. So it exists. But I'll still leave that out there. I think this is a good thing, except for self-creation. That might be internal. I'm on the fence on that one just yet. So self-creation may be internal. Because did I spell that right too? Creation? Whatever. Spelling is out here. The inner realm doesn't mind about spelling. That's why I don't really care if I spell correctly. So I have the external, external, and internal. Now, which one do you think affects us the most, internal or external? Internal? I have 2 for internal. Going once. External? Internal. 3 for internal. You all lose. Well, no, I'm kidding. They both do. They both affect us. However, we are more affected by the external world than we know. Most of us have the reactions. Now remember, if I go with thoughts, emotions, fears, and memories and put them over here, that constitutes my physical being. I'm reacting to something. So we know that there's an external and an internal realm. We have, in Omega 1, we talk to you about conscious and unconsciousness. We say conscious is when I'm aware of what I'm doing. So I can be conscious of speaking harmful to you. Is that beneficial just because I'm conscious of it? No. So I can be consciously harmful and it's still detrimental. So consciousness is not the key. We strive for consciousness, awareness. That's really what we're searching for, awareness. But the greatest thing that we must be aware of is our own environment. We are affected more by this than we know. For example, if you were to work in an environment that is very negative, that's full of judgment and gossip and greed, for the entire day, nothing but interrupt, screaming, yelling, if you worked there the entire day, when you got home, how do you think you would feel? Joyful? Miserable. We may feel miserable, disappointed, depressed. We might feel a little depressed, exhausted. Now, here's the trick. This is the one thing that I like what George said. We are not miserable, depressed, and exhausted because of the environment. We are miserable, depressed, and exhausted because we were unaware that the environment was affecting us. We were unaware that we took the negativity on. There is a place within us where we can walk amongst the negative, the judgmental, the critical, and not be affected by them. But we must be aware of this. And that's what captured my attention. That's why I thought this would be a good workshop to talk about. Because most of us do define the internal world as that. And according to George, we're missing the mark. We're in touch with these things. Most of the time we're unaware of this. And of course the 5 senses is a big thing. We might be focused on what we smell or what we see, what we hear, but we're not focused on what we're feeling inside. So the five senses takes us away from how it's affecting me internally, because I'm looking externally. I'm experiencing life externally. Now, we know, as human beings, we're all intelligent. I'm going to assume everyone in this room is intelligent. Is that all right? Anybody argue with me? Okay. I'm assuming everybody who's watching, you are all intelligent as well. Now, knowing that we are intelligent human beings, we also understand vibrations. We know that there's positive and negative vibrations. Words carry vibrations. Torkin did a great lecture on this, that words have vibrations. You know the difference between saying I love you versus I hate you. You feel the difference, as well as the person who you say it to can feel the difference. So words carry vibrations. All right? If words carry vibrations, and I consciously choose to use negative, demeaning, hurtful, spiteful, harmful words to you, why would I choose to do that? As a conscious human being, and I know that it's going to hurt you, why would I choose to do that? Have a conversation with your buddy. All right, if I can have your attention, please. Now, I know I may be stretching you because this is a group of people who come to work on awareness and personal growth, and you may not have it in you anymore to be harmful and vindictive. But at one time, we were very harmful and vindictive. We can think about ourselves as children. Sometimes children can act out. We act out that way because we have fear. We act out that way because we have memories or arrest records. We're emotionally tied. So our internal, well, the list that you have here, which is actually over here, it's the external world is causing us to be vindictive, even though we know not to do it. Every child knows to tell the truth. And what does every child do? Lie. If they think they're going to get in trouble, they lie. Even when you tell them, if you lie to me, you'll be punished, but if you lie and I find out, you'll be punished worse. I'm sorry. If you do something, you'll be punished, but if you lie about it, you'll get punished worse for the lying. Even though we tell them that, they still choose to lie until they finally figure it out, well, it's not worth lying anymore. So a lot of us were that way when we were children. We can therefore assume that most of the reason why we act out in a harmful manner with words, actions, and thoughts, it's because we're reacting or acting like children in a world that is scary to us. We want to protect ourselves. So we have this illusion that to strike first is the best protection. Now, we can look at today's current events. We have Russia and Ukraine right now. Who will strike first? Do you think they care? No. It's about protection. I read this article today, which I could not believe. In China, there were over 140 people stabbed by 6 individuals. A bunch of this gang, I don't know, it's Muslim connected, but this gang went in, some person who was attacked, what do they call them? Victim, thank you. A victim was talking about how he saw a person walk in with a big bag and drop it in the middle of a train station, and all of a sudden 6 people ran, pulled out knives, and started chopping people like machetes, working their way through everyone that was standing there. They killed 6 people, 140 were injured. They used knives because knives, something about it causes more fear with a knife because you can't see it, where the guns you can hide. With a knife you can't hide. But I was intrigued by this. What causes these 6 people to do this? Do they think they're making a statement? And one of the witnesses said that he felt sorry that they're upset because of whatever religious upheaval is going on, that they're going to not strike against the government who's diminishing them, but they're going to strike innocent people. And that's what I thought was really heartfelt, is, they're attacking people who have nothing to do with their cause, but they're wanting to make a statement. So why do people do that? Well, because they want to make a statement. So I act out in harm so that my voice could be heard. Sometimes that's what we do. We say harmful things because I want my voice to be heard. I do harmful things because I want you to know you hurt me, and I'm going to make sure you hurt back. So we react this way. Is this the higher way of being? Absolutely not. We know this, but we still do it. Why? because we are still connected to the external world. These are the lower centers in me. When I am operating from the lower centers, I do not have control, a higher sense of control. The higher centers, which operate from the internal realm, that's love, compassion, patience, understanding. We can have acceptance. Unconditional love exists on the internal realm. On the external realm, it's completely and totally conditional. I will love you only if you do, and I give you a list. That's conditional. Unconditional, whatever you do, whatever you say, I'll never stop loving you. I'll always support you. Doesn't matter. You cannot be harmed with unconditional love. With conditional love, oh, you bet you can be harmed. We can retaliate. We can be injured. Look at the divorce rate in our society. People don't marry with unconditional love anymore. They marry with conditions, considering that it's love, but it's not. So, back to the statement. Why do we always, or why do we injure when we know it's detrimental? George used to make the comment about judging. He always used to cringe with me because judgment used to be my big thing. I'm free from judgment now. But in the days when I used to be very judgmental, he would cringe and he would say, "You have no idea what you're doing to yourself." And I couldn't understand that. I'm like, I'm not judging. It's those people I'm judging. I'm not care. How's this affecting me? And he would try to explain to me, and I was so dense at the time, he would go over and over explain it to me, where he would say that every time I judged, I was putting an account to myself. I was injuring myself, and in the end, it was going to affect me. I didn't understand that. How can this affect me? They don't even know what I'm saying. So, I gave myself permission to judge because nobody knows what I'm saying. It's all in my head. Or if I say it out loud, it's just to George, and he's unconditional. He'll love me no matter what. So I would continue on in a judgmental fashion until one day I saw an event occur. I had this woman who yelled at the top of her lungs, screaming at me because of an action that I had done. Nothing to do with her, but she made it about her. Screaming at the top of her lungs, just irate, arms flying in the air, and I'm standing there, and George is standing there, and I'm standing there looking at her, thinking, and finally I just look at George, and she's yelling at me, "Why aren't you going to say anything? Why aren't you going to say anything?" And I look at George and say, "What do you want me to do?" And he said, "Walk away, it's not about you." So I took a deep breath, I looked her in the eyes, I nodded, and I walked away. Later, when we talked about that, he said, "Well, if you believe in karma, you just got paid back for all the judgment that I had created." He said, "You just got paid back for that," which I started to understand about the karma. And when we understand the law of polarity and the law of vibrations, we understand, especially correspondence, whatever I'm putting out is going to come back to me. So if I'm judging, whether I'm judging externally or with my mind or with my mouth, it will come back to me eventually. So I'm very grateful that I had a very quick karma. I mean, I say quick, it was probably 27 years of judgment, and then I had one big explosion. Hopefully that paid me off, but it captured my attention because it was right, George was right. It had nothing to do with me, and yet I was the brunt of this attack. I mean, and it was a vicious harm. This woman just went all over me. And to walk away required a lot of strength because I wanted to fight back. I was ready to take her down. And then I just remembered surrendering. I just remember looking over at George and surrendering, thinking, all right, whatever he says I'm going to do because he's the master, he knows, and if he says walk away, I'm walking away. And so I walked away. And like I said, later on we talked about it, and I really understood the idea that negativity, whether I have negative thoughts or words, I am putting it out there and it will come back to me. Therefore, my job would be to only project beauty, love, joy, goodness, instead of harmful thoughts and actions. So my job would be I have to incorporate what we call the work, meaning I have to not take things personal, meaning I have to rise above my emotions, meaning I have to find compassion, even in the most difficult situations, to find compassion. Meaning I have to find patience, even when I'm flat out exhausted. I must be patient with whoever stands before me. That's called the work. All right, so everyone's got a good, clear picture now? So, when it comes to the, I'm going to just erase this list so I can go back to my original thoughts here. When it comes to this list, the internal world, George calls this our higher centers. That would be the place, the origin of love, compassion, peace, understanding, patience. So these are my higher senses. And the external world, therefore, will correlate back to our lower centers. My physical, emotional, mental, the five, if you can think about the five senses, my physical being has five senses, that would give you a good indication of our lower sensors. So these are the lower. I wanted to be able to get rid of the definition so you don't begin to get confused as I continue on here. So I have my higher senses and my lower senses. Now, the two worlds that exist, the outer, external, I'm going to call that the outer, the internal, or inner. So it's the inner, internal, or outer, external. Now, George did this little play with words here. He said that the outer world, the external world, is a world of the five senses, our lower centers. The inner, or the internal world, is a world of the senses. He called it the work. This is where the work begins. So over here, this is where I practice the work. You know how we often call what we do here the work, because it's hard, it's arduous, it's never-ending. There's always another mountain, always another thing in our way, always another opportunity to expand and grow. On the lower senses, we have work. It's not the work. Work is the 9-to-5 jobs, the ins and outs of daily living. That would be the work. I'm sorry, work. So we have work and the work. When I look at the internal world, George also said that if we really wanted to get the point across, the internal world is actually the eternal world. The eternal, the work, connects me to eternity. How I count up, how I add up by the end, how the rest of my eternity will end out, is based upon my accounts of how I handled the external and the internal realm. I really like that. I thought that was a good play on words where he went for eternity. George didn't very often talk about eternity very well. Very often, excuse me. Did I say very often twice already? George did not speak about eternity very often. And I wonder, now that he's over there, if he's got a different point of view now. I have this, when he died, for a while I would have dreams of him falling and I couldn't get to him, and or he'd show up and I'm like, where have you been for 6 months? Who's been taking care of you? And it's always the panic rescue kind of mode, and he would barely speak. Well, a couple of weeks ago I had a dream where he was vivid and alive and actually talking to me about some of the work that we were doing. And in the conversations like we've had in the years past. And that was always one of my desires, to get to the point where my memory doesn't remember him the last 8 years of pain and suffering and decay. I wanted to go back to the 10 years that I knew him, the 10, 11 years of working together in the classroom and the conversations that we'd had and the writings that we did together. And it happened a couple of weeks ago. Had this dream where he was talking to me, and then in the middle of the dream he said, forget it, you're not going to remember this, and he just started writing. I'm like, what? What do you mean I'm not going to remember it? So I started looking for my phone. In my dream, I'm looking for my phone for the voice recorder to record him so that I'd remember what he's saying, and then I couldn't get the application to work, and then he left. I'm like, come back! So, haven't quite got the handle of the dreams yet, but I was grateful that I was actually able to transcend the negative dream to the positive dreams now, where I feel like maybe he's making an attempt to steer me in a little bit more of eternal direction. Externally, we're aware of the consequences. So in the external realm, if I slap you as hard as I can, and I can slap pretty hard, Probably didn't need to tell you that. I've never hit another human being. But if I slapped you, if you've ever been slapped or you saw somebody slapped, you'd see a handprint. So a handprint can pretty much remain on their cheek, maybe a minute or two, depending on how hard you hit them. The blood rushes because and there's the stinging feeling. So there's a physical consequence to a physical harmful action. If I slap you, I am unaware of the internal consequence. I'm unaware of it because I don't know what state of mind you're at. I don't know if you're in a peaceful, loving state, or if I slap you, it won't affect you. I don't know if you're depressed and a slap throws you off the deep end. I have no idea how internally I'm affecting you by my external harmful actions. Everyone's with me on that one? Most of us don't think that either. As I stated earlier, when we react, I'm going to hurt you because you hurt me, I'm not thinking this is going to injure you and I'm going to feel terrible about it. I want you to be injured, and I get happy that you're injured. Strange, but true. We end up doing this. I remember seeing a boss one time excited because he got to fire somebody. I was like, what? He never liked him, and it was about time he went. But that person's family is depending on his salary. I mean, you give him a little compassion. None. He was just so excited to be able to fire somebody. There are people who are like that in the world. It was my job not to judge them, which I do so well. So, I mean, don't judge, whatever. All right. The inner realm is harder to find the consequences. I've already established that. Here's the thing to consider. If I berate you, I use negative language. I attack you with every four-letter word I can think of. And I'm aggressive towards you. I could be arrested for slander. You could take me to court and arrest me for ruining your business. Or what are those cheap magazines that get sued all the time?
Tabloids?
The tabloids, thank you. So the tabloids just make up stuff, and every once in a while the stars will sue them. I saw Ellen talking the other day. I don't see her show very often, but there was this little clip on YouTube, and she was talking to someone. She said, yeah, apparently I'm getting a divorce. I guess I just found that out. Because on the tabloids they had it, breakup, Portia's upset with this, that, and whatever. And she's like, really? I didn't know my wife was upset about that. I guess I should talk to her. Maybe she's talking to the tabloids. But every once in a while, a tabloid will be sued by a star. I remember when the tabloids first came out, a lot of people sued them until they realized that through the lawsuits, it was increasing their circulation because people wanted to read what they had written about. So it's like a no-end situation. But the tabloids are amazing to me because they can lie, flat out lie, and make money. That's a contradiction to the inner realm. If I lie, it should affect me more than a reward. But if I am invested on the external realm, I want finances, I want fame, I want glory, and I spread a lie, and it gives me recognition, I'm willing to sacrifice my soul for that. Truly. There are stories, fables, lots of children's fables where people sacrifice their soul for something that they want. Ariel, what was the name of that movie? Little Mermaid, thank you. Little Mermaid's a great illustration. She gladly signs the acts because she wants to be a human being and doesn't realize that the evil octopus lady is going to take away her voice. So she can be a human being, but she can't speak. And if she doesn't get a kiss by I don't know how many days, she doesn't have somebody fall in love with her by a certain amount of time, her soul is gone. She easily gives that away because this is what she wants. She wants reward externally. The internal world, we don't feel the reward. Same like the consequence, we don't see the reward. This we may not ever see until the day of reckoning, until reconciliation comes in and we are standing at the pearly white gates, or George, whoever's there, and they're asking us the questions on how we did in our lives. That's when we realize our worth. So out here, when I have external worth, it is detrimental to me. So many times when you look at the people who are involved in the tabloids, they're sleazy individuals. At least I'm sorry, that was judgmental too, wasn't it? How do I define somebody that's sleazy without calling them sleazy? They're a low vibration character. So they have low vibrations, they're manipulative, they're greedy, they're lustful, they're manipulative. I can't think of any other word that's not judgmental, so I'll stop there.
Dishonest.
Dishonest, thank you, they're dishonest. So it makes me think, what's their consequence going to be? Like, what are their accounts adding up to? All the injury that they're causing, and it's not just by word of mouth, they're printing it and selling it across the world. It's on the internet, everybody can see it. Can you imagine how many accounts they're building up against them? That is very surprising to me. The first one, if I have my recollection correct here, the first columnist who ever turned to gossip, just flat out lies, was the woman, and I do not recall her name, but she destroyed Charlie Chaplin because Charlie Chaplin wouldn't give her an interview, so she flat out just started making lies about him. And eventually he had to leave the country because she just condemned the heck out of him and printed it. And, oh, if it's printed, it must be true. You know, if it's on the internet, it must be true. Back then, if it's printed, it must be true. So anything that anybody wrote, it must be true. That's harmful, very harmful. So I often wonder whatever happened to her. I was hoping suicide or something like that. Sorry. That was very judgmental of me as well. But I'm not judgmental. So, if we berate ourselves internally, the negative language, different type of person, it constructs us, it attacks us, it holds accounts for us, and one day that has to be settled. Now here's another interesting thing that George said. We cannot harm another human being in the external world with our heart and mind. We can't do it. We cannot harm another human being in the internal world without equally causing the same amount of suffering to ourselves. So externally, the only one I'm hurting is me. Internally, I may be hurting you, but I have the same account. So either way, I'm injuring. Externally and internally, either way, I injure. On the external, it's almost like a waste of time because it doesn't affect them. My mind and my heart. Physically, I can harm another human being. That's quite true. And I will be held accountable for that as well. On the laws of the land, in the physical realm, we have the laws where, oh look, the laws just said hi. In the laws of the land, we have the police and the judges and the court system to hold us accountable, the prison system. All of that holds us accountable to our actions as best that we can, unless we get a lawyer, a sleazy lawyer, I'm sorry. A corrupt and dishonest lawyer who's willing to let people off for money. That's not judgmental. That would be an external world lawyer. Thank you. That's a good definition. So an external world lawyer would be somebody who doesn't recognize the amount of injury he's causing to himself, his client, and the other people that he's accusing or attacking as well. So back here. The paradoxes. So I'm building up a good sentence here that, some of us favor the internal world and we don't want to deal with the external world. Here's the paradox. George said that there are those people who commit themselves to the work. Oh, they memorize the virtues and they memorize the 8 unfolded path of Buddha and they memorize the steps you're supposed to take and they do the mantras and the oms and they sit for hours in silence and they work the work. That's not the work. If they're still filled with judgment, greed, dishonor, that's not work. That's just a mirror reflecting what they ought to be doing, but it is not the work. The paradox is, in order for me to excel in the work, I must first master the external world. So in order for me to master the internal world, I must master the external world. And this is the caution that George and I used to talk about years ago, about delivering a program to people perhaps who are not ready for it, especially in the teen program. When I put that program together, I would be very cautious of not introducing something to them that may end up turning around and biting them in the butt. For example, how do I teach a teenager about integrity when his parents don't have integrity? This sets up a conflict. Who does he believe, me or his parents? And I don't want to cause that conflict. I don't want him to see that his parents do not have integrity. You don't want to break that wall. So we would talk about this, the struggle of how do you give information to people who are not prepared. And George always used to say that's why we don't charge for the program, because only those who are called to us will come. If you put a fee to it, people think it's got value and I'm going to go to it because I'm going to learn something, and they have an expectation. Where we keep it pure. It's open and available to anyone. We don't solicit. It's whoever decides to come here, it's because they were called to be here. And then we just take our chances from there. So, the paradox is, I have to master the external world first. Now, what does that look like? Well, remember. Thank goodness. Did you know he'll leave you there? Come back in 2 weeks and we'll talk about it. So if I want to master the external world, what I must first do is to begin to master the 5 sensors. Now this is not something new. Look at any dogma, any philosophy, any religion, they'll talk about mastering our 5 senses, to rise above our emotions, to rise above my ego, to not be driven by, it's all about me, but to think about universality instead of individualism, to think about us as a whole rather than that group over there, to be able to embrace one another. This SB 10, whatever it was now, this last Lord, that was 62, 10B62, is that it? 1062. So not talking politics, forget the politics, but what I want to talk about is the idea of the law. The law was attempted to be put in place because an individual was sued by turning down a job solely because the couple was gay. The couple sued this individual because they have a right to have services. They could have went to another business owner and not dealt with this individual. So that person who got sued, he got sued and he had to pay. The judge went with the gay couple against this individual. So the SB 1062, the premise was put to protect people from being sued for being discriminatory. If you really think about it, that's what it ended up being. I'm going to sue you, or you can't sue me if I decide I want to be discriminatory against you. And that's where the big uprising went. But the original thing was to protect people from being sued. So if you took out the discrimination and just said, let's protect business owners from being sued, I think that would be a good law, that you can't just sue me just because I don't want to work for you, because I don't feel like I'm out of alignment. I mean, I've had this where I've turned people down because now I don't feel comfortable working with you. Are you going to turn around and sue me because I don't feel comfortable working with you? But if we look at this from the internal realm, I should feel comfortable to work with anybody, shouldn't I? Anything other than that is discriminatory. Anything other than that is the external world. I'm reacting with my 5 senses. So my mind, the mental aspect of me, wants to justify. Well, you shouldn't sue me, blah, blah. That's the mental. I have to rise above that. In the internal realm, I have to rise above that. Whoever stands before me to be of service. That's the work. Whoever stands before me to be of service. Whatever you need, whatever I can do for you, I will be of service, within limits. Now I'm saying within limits because there are plenty of vultures. Is that judgmental? Plenty of vultures on the external realm who will take advantage of you, so we must be mindful. Unfortunately, I have seen George be gotten several times. And each time I knew it was a scam. And I'm ranting and raving, saying to him, it's a scam. And I'm watching thousands of dollars being spent. And he would look at me and say, if it is a scam, why does this affect you so much? Because you're being taken advantage of, like that's my protective mode. And he says, but I'm consciously doing this. And even if it's a scam, don't you think I'm paying back karma? Or perhaps maybe I'm investing in karma. I couldn't understand that. You consciously are being willing to take advantage, to being taken advantage of. So I wrestled with this a long time. I'm thinking of one situation in particular that was at least 4 or 5 years. Mr. George? At least 4 or 5 years. Sorry, that was an inside joke. And about 3 years into it, I finally surrendered. I said, okay, if this is what you want to do, if this is what the internal world is, if this is what the work is, I know you're being taken advantage of. My inner gut tells me you're being taken advantage of. And if this is the direction you want to be in, I'm going to support you. What can I do? How can I help you? That was hard. That was really hard. I even gave up money. I sent a whole bunch of money over to whatever the cause was because I'm going to support George in this. If this is what he believes is the right thing to do, then I'm going to do it. Now, in the end, he lost thousands of dollars. A whole bunch of people lost money because, unfortunately, he reached out to the Omega family and this guise of, oh, there's millions coming back to us. And anyway, it affected George big time. It affected the organization big time. And we lost a lot of people because of it, because they thought George misguided them. He was willing to take that on. So he took that on as his karma. Now, the next dream I have, I'll ask him if it paid off. But right now, I don't have the answer. But he would say, remember, eternity. We're thinking about eternity. How do you know this isn't a debt you're paying off? Now, I've said this for years. I am in admiration of my parents. I don't know the process of what it's like to come down to this planet, to pick and choose what family you're going to be part of and what your parents are going to be. I don't know. But if there is a process out there, I'm in admiration to think that my parents chose to come down and be abusive and violent to their children so that we can have an experience. They took on a debt so that we can have an experience. That is very admirable to me. It takes a lot of detachment to be able to do that, to not be right or wrong. You have to be detached. You have to come from this internal realm. Unconditionally, I truly feel in my heart, I feel for my parents how much karma they have taken on, or maybe they're paying me back. So we don't know the whole story, but I choose to find admiration and love for them rather than anger and upset. We don't know what the story is with your mom, but we can have an understanding that she gave you an opportunity to be who you are, an opportunity to practice love and acceptance. I'm just picking on her because I know her story. To practice love and acceptance and compassion and understanding. Every difficult venture that comes before us here sharpens us for here. So until I master it here, I will never fully understand the internal world. Never. I must learn to first master it here. That means I have to master my senses. I must rise above my addictions. Rise above my addictions. Mark and I were talking today. It's been 63 days since I've had a Starbucks. Now, I haven't risen above my addictions because I'm still counting the days. So I'm not sure if that's rising above the addictions, but I know I practice on it. Every day I think, we went by a Starbucks today and I really started walking over there and I went, no, what am I doing? So it's an unconscious behavior. So we have to consciously work on that. We rise above our addictions. We rise above the people that we associate with. We associate with individuals who are externally focused, then that will take us down this road. If we wish to find this venture, we have to find people who are vibrating on this level. This is not new. It is always said to find a teacher who is one level above you so that you can be inspired to go towards the light. If you find those who are sharing the same level as you, you're both on the same one, you might take each other down. You always have to have a light, someone who's burning their brilliance, finding a teacher or a master. George was wonderful at this. So to be able to reach for the light, go to the light. Oh, sorry. Another private joke. Do you remember that horrible movie, The Poltergeist? Go to the light. The little lady, and that big devil face comes out. That would be my dream tonight. I bet you that's what I'm going to dream about now, something devil coming at me. So, the idea is that when we're searching for the work, we must be able to master the external world first. I must master my emotions, my thinking, my desires. I must master my senses, my emotions, my ego, My mind. I was talking to Mark today, so I've been on this fitness thing, so I'm doing my elliptical, and I'm up to 20 minutes a day. Woo! So disappointed because I was an athlete and no longer an athlete, so facing. So you know how when you're working out, your little mind never lets you alone? Oh, 5 minutes is fine. We can stop now. Oh, I'm tired. No, I'm going to pull a muscle. I better stop. I mean, every thought that could possibly come in your mind comes. Look, where do they come from? Stop it. I'm working out. I'm fine. You know, I got the music blaring so I can just focus on the words. And I've got my computer screen. There's an eagle who's had her 3rd egg yesterday. I'm so excited. But, you know, she's laying eggs. I've got a live stream. I'm watching the eagle. I'm listening to the music. And I still have the thoughts. Oh, just go 17 minutes today. It's okay. You don't have to do 20. You're fine. Oh, you've already burned this amount of calories. That'll be fine. You don't have to. I could not believe the amount of struggle I had. And this goes on every day. You'd think I'd be used to it by now. Now, I'm certain I'm not the only one who experiences this, because your heads are all shaking and smiling right now. So I'm certain you all have the same struggles that I do. So that's my mind. My mind wants comfort. My mind does not want to work. We made it this far. We're good. My mind is about settling. Hey, we're good. It's okay. This is fine. This is good enough. My mind settles for the good enough. It's the internal world that takes me the second mile. The external world, hey, I'm fine. We'll just do what I said. Internal world takes me one step further. So knowing that I knew I was going to deliver this tonight, and I'm struggling, and I'm watching the clock, and I'm thinking, stop watching the clock because it makes it worse, because it goes slower. When you watch it, it goes slower. And I thought, okay, I'm just not going to look. I'm just going to look at the ceiling, and I've got a beautiful picture of Sedona, so I'm looking at Sedona. I'm running in Sedona, and then I thought, okay, if I really wanted to push myself, I'm going to go as fast as I can. And I looked down, and I saw that I was at 68 reps, which is fast for me. I'm old. So I saw 68. I'm like, oh, wow, cool. I was doing 68, and then I looked up, and I reached my 20-minute mark. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go a little longer than 20 minutes. I did 15 extra seconds. So, small victory. But the idea was I had to fight my mind the whole way. That's the external world. We want instant gratification. We want satisfaction. We want it now. So, you know, the internet is killing us on this one. It cracks me up here. Now, back to the idea of rising above this. I must also rise above the things that prevent me from embracing the work. I must rise above judgment. I must be conscious. Now remember I talked about earlier being conscious? I can be conscious of harming you. Well, I can also be conscious of being harmless. So I must be conscious of striving towards acceptance. That's the opposite of judgment. So I must catch myself when I'm judging. You've seen me do this tonight a couple of times. I must be aware. I'm judging. Stop. Switch it. So I must catch myself. Now this can be very disheartening. When you start to catch yourself on how much you judge in a day, it makes you not want to pay attention anymore. It makes you want to drink a bottle of vodka and go sit down and watch TV. Because it's annoying that you are judgmental after judgmental after judgmental after judgment. I'm sorry, did I just expose you? So it really can be disheartening. This is why we call it the work. To see yourself judge and not judge yourself for judging. Because remember, if you judge yourself for judging, you are harming yourself. So you must practice acceptance on your judgment. Now there's a paradox. Acceptance on your judgment. You must practice accepting you. So we're critical. We know we're the biggest jury, judge on our lives. We're the most critical on ourselves. So the first person I must start with, which most of you might be shocked when you hear me say this, is myself. I have to learn to accept myself. Now, in the program, we often talk about you have to love first before you love another. You have to give first before trust somebody before they trust you. Well, in this paradox, if I want to be set free, I must accept me first. So I have to accept my judging. Accept this is what I'm doing. I am a creature of the earth. I have lower senses. I have lower centers as well. So I have these. The lower centers exist within me. I cannot judge them. If I judge them, I will never attain the higher centers. Never. So I must overcome judgment. I must overcome greed. I must overcome greed. That means my possessions are not my possessions. They are just something I have hold on for a while. That's it. So I must overcome greed. I must overcome jealousy. Jealousy, I'm grateful, is something I've never experienced. So jealousy, from what I understand, turns people into maniacs. So they are green with envy. That's the same thing with jealousy. I must not experience anger. I must rise above anger and look for joy. When a moment is coming, instead of getting angry, I must shift my focus to joy. How can I implement joy in this moment? How can I spread beauty in this moment? Do you think that is easy to do? No. This is why we call it the work. I must overcome envy, which I've already connected to. I must overcome lust. All of this, because all of them actually prevent me from doing the work. So again, if I walk over here and I memorize the things that I'm supposed to do, the dogmas of whatever philosophy I've dedicated my life to. If I'm over here and I'm memorizing it, but I am still full of judgment, anger, greed, envy, I am not accomplishing the work. I am under the illusion that I am working. And this is one of the most dangerous places to be. If I am under the illusion that I'm working, one day I will discover that nothing has changed. As a matter of fact, one day I will discover that things are getting worse. And I will get angry and upset that I've dedicated a life to the work and it's not working. And I'll blame the dogma instead of me. I will come over here and say, this is a bunch of crap. And I'll toss it to the side and look for something else. Something else that maybe gives me a little bit more satisfaction. Something that's a little easier. You know, maybe I'll just go do yoga and be in a mantra state for the rest of my life, thinking that will be it. And then those of you who do yoga, and you still don't find peace, then you blame the yoga. Then we'll go for another thing. So when I am in this world, but I am not in this world, is very harmful. Very harmful to me. And it's disrespectful to the work. Because when we walk away with anger, we are injuring the philosophy. Our thoughts affect things, they're vibrations. So when I walk away with a negative thought towards somebody else's philosophy or idea or the work or light, I'm filtering or diminishing the capacity of light. Light is pure. Light, unfiltered, unrestricted, is pure. We all live because of light, because of the sun. So physically, we could talk about this. The sun is the center of our universe. I saw something the other day. I was watching the Discovery Channel. It's one of the only channels I watch, except for the Big Bang Theory. I have to tell you a funny thing. So my stepdaughter came home yesterday and she said, call me, Anne Marie, I have to hear the ringer I put on my phone for you. So I called her and the Big Bang Theory theme song starts playing on her phone. I'm like, send that to me. Anyway, that was a side note. So when we think about the universe, I saw this show on TV. It was talking about what if there was no moon? What if the Earth had no moon? It was talking about the creation of the moon. It talked about the planet and the sun. And how the formation of the sun, that is the source of our light. And it's in the center. And as I'm watching this, I typically start applying philosophy to it. Because George and I used to watch the Discovery Channel when he was laying in bed not doing much. We'd watch this and talk about, well, doesn't the solar system look like the atoms? And the planets could look like the protons and electrons circling around the atom. And what's the source of the atom? Nobody really knows. And if you go deep down inside, there's nothing but space. And if we go external, as far as we can go, it's space. So there's space on either side. So how do we master the space and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, so we're talking about the sun. And the sun is the source of our life. The sun keeps the planet alive. The photons come, the plants eat it, we eat the plants. We actually feel better when we're in the sun. If you've ever spent a great deal of time indoors, you will notice that you become draggy. You're heavy. You don't feel enlightened. That's not the right word because that's light, but you don't feel positive. As a matter of fact, there's a whole new thing happening with office lights. They're changing the interior lights. These lights are, we changed those, they're not fluorescent. They're fluorescent, but they're the special kind of fluorescence, so it emulates natural light a little bit more than regular light. But one of the companies that I work with, they've changed out all the lights to where they're LED lights now that are even, so it's less of a vibration, it's LED, but it's more natural light to have more of an atmosphere. And you could tell the difference when you walk, well, at least I could. I felt the difference when I walked in there. I felt more energized. So anyway, when we're not feeling well, the suggestion is often to go outside, stand in the sun. The sun is very healing for many people. So the sun is the source of our light. Now, I just got sidetracked, so let me figure out where I was going to when I talked about the light. Go to the light, the source of light. I made the poltergeist joke already. I've lost where I was going to go with that, so you all know the sun is the source of our light. There. I made a contribution to you. So, let me see.
You were going to say something about the moon, Anne-Marie.
Thank you. The moon. So the moon, for those of you who are familiar with George I. Gurdjieff. Gurdjieff is a fourth-grade teacher. Gurdjieff talked about the moon is not a living thing, it reflects the light. So the moon actually is, what's the line he says? It's food, our emotions are food for the moon. So when we have emotions, we're not going back to the source of light, we're going back to something that's dead, that just absorbs light and it doesn't reproduce. So when it comes to the work, if I'm practicing the work, we can look up at the moon and it's very bright. And we say, oh wow, look, a great source of light. But it's not. It's just a reflection of light. It is a dead rock that simply reflects light. That is the same with you and me. When I come over here and I project the work and I look like I'm doing the work, I'm not. I'm dead as the moon. Truly, I'm just dead as the moon. I have no source. I cannot project anything. I cannot inspire anyone. There are people who learn this language and they go off and do seminars because they want to sell it and make money for them. They want to be the great guru. They want to be the one in front of the room. They want to be the one that everyone looks to. They want the source of power. But they are just a reflection of the light. They've just learned how to say it. They're not expressing it in their lives, so they are like the moon. They're false. It's a false sense of understanding of the work. The work, as I've already stated, we must master the lower centers of our being. That's the first thing I must do, is master the lower centers of my being. 1 second. I must master my throat right now. Not to be funny, but I could use that. So when my throat is sore, we take care of it, don't we? So when I have a physical ailment, it's easy for me to understand what needs to be done. When I have an inner ailment, is it easy for me to recognize? Sometimes it takes years before it shows up, and then I think, oh, it just happened because of what happened last night, when it's not. As I stated earlier, the years of judgment, and I had that woman explode on me, I could say, well, it was just that one event. No, it's not. It's the years of judgment that I carried with me that gave me that consequence. So when I am focused on the external world, my lower centers, I must be able to master them and not react. Of course, in Omega 1, we talked to you about this, about not reacting. We talked to you about arising above the emotions. We talk about the arrest records. Everybody remember the arrest records? So these are events in my life that cause me pain and suffering, and then I create a story, and then I believe the story instead of the event. My job to free myself from my arrest records is to find the value of the events. When I learn to find the value of the events, I switch over to the inner world, because only the inner world understands that. The external world says, no, an injustice was done, you must pay. The internal world says, wow, I got stronger because of this. I learned something about this. I understand compassion because of this event. I understand understanding because of this event. So the internal world, I may not see the rewards, but it takes me on a journey. The external world, it may not look like I understand. Externally, I look the same. But internally, there's something different within me. We used to say this in Omega 1. When people would come to the program, we'd say, come the end of Sunday, go back to work, go back home Monday morning. You won't look different. You'll look the same. Internally, you'll feel different, though. Your coworkers or your family members might say, oh, what was that about? You still look the same. Nothing's different. you know, those who were frightened. You've gone to the cult. And yet, inner, you feel different. I guess the thing I'd like to say is when it comes to the external world, it's all about me and how I look, how I sound. The internal world, these are the silent ones, the ones that don't search for the accolades. Did anybody read the newsletter that I sent out on Friday? Okay, so in the newsletter I wrote an article about the handicap, which I was told you're not supposed to say handicap, you're supposed to say
Physically challenged.
physically challenged, whatever. I'm deaf, I call myself handicapped, it doesn't offend me. Apparently offends people to being called a handicap, which, you know, I'm not judging. So, in that article I talked about the young woman who crossed the road with her walker. And I really was afraid for her because that walker was really shaking. And she was really leaning on it. She had a lot of pressure on it. But you could tell it was one of the first times, at least my experience of watching people, it looked like one of the first times she was on her own with it because she didn't really seem to have it down yet. But when she finally made it across, and nobody moved, we all watched her, when she finally made it across, I remember seeing that little silent smile of victory. She didn't look around to thank everybody and take a bow. She just made a little, yeah, I did it, and then set her walker and ready to go down the next. It was just one task down, the next one to tackle. So there was no accolades. There was no desire for awards or ceremonies or she didn't pull out her phone and say, guess what I just did? She didn't take a selfie. She just did her thing. Sorry, selfies are the new things now. So she just continued walking. And I think that was probably the most beautiful thing that I saw. Not just feeling her victory of getting across there, feeling, because I have had this experience with a number of people where they first learn to walk after being injured and the struggle they go through and the upset. And so I identified with her on that because I've been there, I've seen it. But just the idea that she didn't look for accolades, that's what really caught my attention. Most out of anything, it caught my attention. And I'm aware that a lot of physically challenged individuals have the same attitude. They don't look for accomplishments. They don't look for, oh, you know, it's just no big deal. People are amazed, oh, I can't believe you did that. Oh, what? It was no big deal. To them, it's just a challenge. To us, it's just a challenge. Because I'm saying us because we're all handicapped. You all have arrest records, and that handicaps us in our physical, emotional, and mental world. We're socially inept because of our handicaps. Handicap, handicap, handicap. Sorry. I'll edit that part. The idea is, if I'm attached to the internal world, I will look for accolades. I'm going to look for their approval. I'm going to go tell everybody, here, look what I did. I got a gold star. You know where that starts? As children. We give the accolades to our kids when they do something great. Oh, look how good! We put it up on the refrigerator for everyone to see. Look how wonderful we are. Now, I'm not sure how our society would be if we didn't encourage our children. If we put them in an environment where they didn't get the accolades, would they still search for them? I don't know. I'm sure there's probably a survey out there that somebody did about people who did. Is there? Do they have?
I used to work for a pediatrician, a nurse, and she used to tell parents, you know, you don't need to applaud them for everything that they do. They don't need to be told how great they are, because sometimes they're going to suffer disappointment. And if you continually are applauding this, something that's they should be doing, they're not going to be able to handle disappointment. And so she would encourage parents not to always give accolades to their kids.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Have you ever encountered somebody who didn't get any accolades?
No.
Okay, so
I never encountered anyone who never did.
that's what I'm thinking.
I never would give my daughter any accolades for things like picking up her socks off the floor or, you know, taking out the trash. I would just say this is, you know, part of the responsibility of living in a household. When you live on your own, nobody's going to pay you $1 to take out the trash or to pick up your socks off the floor or to flush the toilet, you know, or whatever.
That's my favorite.
Nobody's going to be paying you for these chores. This is just something that we all have to do. for living here, and we shouldn't have to be you go through
Rewarded, yeah.
rewarded for doing these kind of things.
Right, because we have to remind them all the time. But we shouldn't be rewarding them all the time.
Right.
As children, sometimes we do, like the babies, the first time they do something, we say, oh, that's really good, but then after a while, it's like, here, honey, can you do that? Thank you. And a simple thank you should suffice.
Right.
We don't have to do the big,
Well, they even tell you that with dogs, too.
Yes.
When you first start training your dog. You
Yes.
it's good to use treats at first, but then after a while, you gotta stop that.
Right. Just do the hand gestures.
Right.
Except if you're a killer whale, then they, just kill you. Because they want their treats. I'm sorry. That's a little off subject. But it's true that the accolades can have a reverse effect. So again, somebody who's over here and they're applauding an individual for doing something and they're not consistent or carry the weight of the work, it will injure the person they're applauding. We're teaching them not to accept responsibility or disappointment, and as she's already mentioned, it can have a reverse effect on us. So those who judge, who do not embrace, oh, here's a good one. There are those who learn the language and seek the profit for themselves. That's not the work. There are those who judge those who do not embrace the work. So I'm in the work, you're in the work, and I'm judging you because you're not doing it right. That's not the work. I'll say that one more time because that's really profound. I'm in the work, you're in the work, and I judge you because you're not doing the work correctly. That is not the work. I can remember several conversations with George throughout the years. I know I keep mentioning him, but it's because this is his material. And it's very prevalent in my mind lately. The idea that he's closed Omega down several times. I've been with him in the organization for 2 of the shutdowns. And I know that when he shut it down, the first time he shut it down, he had the intention of just shutting it down, reworking it, and then opening back up. The second time, he had no intention of opening back up again. He was done. Because what he discovered is, he had a lot of people claiming that they were doing the work, but they were not doing the work. He had staff members who refused to work with other staff members. Facilitators who used to not work with staff members. They would say, I do not want this person staffing with me. How could you be in front of a room and deliver a program and say, I do not want so-and-so in the back of the room? That is not the work. That's very work-orientated rather than the work. So he would shut it down because he felt like he was gathering a bunch of people who knew what to say, but they didn't have it in their hearts. He knew he was gathering people and teaching them how to do this work. They didn't have it here. So he would shut it down. That's it, we're done. And he would literally wipe his hands and say, that's it, we're done. Now, it didn't mean he was done doing the work, because he always did something else. I've created other programs with him, not Omega. We've done other programs together. We always did the work. So the idea of the work isn't just the words. It's not just the motions, the activities, the meditations, the memorizations. It's not that, and it is. Because in order to achieve this, I must master this. And when I master this, I master that, so I become a balance of both the lower centers and the higher centers. I'm talking like a mule. So my job is to be balanced and equal, to be able to manifest a challenge in the lower realm, overcome it, and have understanding and apply it in the higher realms. That's my job. I cannot eliminate this, because it will naturally eliminate this. They both go hand in hand. They're both necessary. But just as we talk about polarity and vibration, polarity states there are 2 extremes on either side. Correspondence is the same thing, as above, so below. So if I just put it on a line, polarity, I have the 2 extremes, hot and cold. It is never truly just completely hot, and it is never truly completely cold, because there are varying degrees. My hot moves towards cold, so it mixes up with cold, cold. It's still hot, cold, 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 cold. There's just a very little element of hot here, but it's still majority cold. So the 2 extremes are detrimental to me. My job is to be able to balance myself out so I'm not hitting the extremes all the time. To be right around in here, to be centered, eventually to be centered. That's what I want to be, is centered, where nothing can knock me off. I can have an experience in the external realm and be at peace internally. I can provide peace for a room in a negative environment. Eventually, that's what we would like to attain. is to be able to walk into a room with peace and beauty and dispel the negativity, to dispel the anger. Dag Hammarskjöld was an individual who had such a talent. He at one time was the chairman of the,
United Nations?
thank you, United Nations. I was going to say the United States of America. The United Nations. In 1963, I believe, he was the chairman of the United Nations. Very peaceful gentleman, very dedicated gentleman. He would be able to walk into conflict and just calm them down just by his being there. They would see him there, oh, Dag's here, we're going to be fine. But he had such great strength and power. He had great trust. People trusted him because they knew his job was to bring peace. Not to favor one or the other, but to make sure that everyone walks out equally and peacefully without any harm. His job was really harmlessness. Intriguing life he had. He ended up dying in a plane crash mysteriously. They say that the plane was shot down and they never found his body. But he was on his way to a mission in Africa to settle a war that was going on in there, and they think one of the opposing forces shot the plane down because they didn't want Dag to enter into the zone. Anyway, to criticize those who are on the path and struggling is not the work. So if I see you struggling, you moron, don't you know what you're supposed to do? Or if I take on, well, here, this is what you need to do, and I start telling you what to do, that's not the work either. The work accepts and understands that everyone has their own pace. Everyone has their own understanding. When we reach in there and do it for somebody else, we rob them from the experience. When we tell somebody what to do or say, we're creating a mimicking monkey. We're not creating a human being. We're not shining our light. The only time that is permissible for you to pass information on is when you're asked. If somebody asks you for information, then you can give it to them without any advice. This is the information I have, and pass it on. Without any attachment that they take it, understand it, memorize it, adhere to you, vow their life to you, has none of that. You're just another light bearer, that's it. So the work is a light bearer. The work out here, work, is a moon bearer. I don't know if I can say that the right word. But this is shallow. And I'm sorry, shallow is even a negative word too.
Reflective.
It's reflective, but it's the lower centers. It's necessary, mandatory to exist. It's a lower vibration. It's not bad. That's what I wanted to amend. So it's not shallow. It's just a part of us that's required. A pool, if you think about a pool or a beach or a lake, any form of water on the planet has a shallow end before you get into the deep end. It's required and necessary. The shallow end teaches us how to swim. When we're in the shallow end, we're introduced to the water. We can understand it. We can understand the idea of buoyancy and how we have to learn how to hold our breath or the motions that we do until we can travel into the deep end. So this is required, absolutely necessary and essential for my own inner growth. For me to try to pretend that this is not important, that this doesn't exist, it's beyond me. Oh, no, it's not worth my attention. That is not the work. To find within me the things that prevent me from moving forward, I must look at the 5 senses. Again, that's the first thing to start with. My sight, sensing, addictions, my sight, my hearing, my taste, my smell, and touch. All of those can give me an indication of what I'm attached to on the planet. Look around you. When you go home tonight, look at the things you're attached to. The things that you're attached to are the things that prevent you from progressing, because you have an attachment to them. If you can have them in your life and not be attached to them, that's the journey. To be able to be appreciative at this moment, I have this person, I have this house, I have this car, I am grateful for that, and not be attached to it. If it's gone tomorrow, you won't be devastated. That's the work. To be able to look at the outside, external realm, be grateful for what we have, but do not be attached to it, do not be greedy about it. Do not desire your next door neighbor's car because it's better than yours. You're grateful for what you have. Now, does this mean you shouldn't set goals? Absolutely not. Setting goals is a tremendous thing. Setting goals helps me work on the external world. I have another task to tackle. So setting a goal is fantastic, as long as you're not attached to it. That would be the key. And that's one thing that George really preached a great deal, is not being attached. Not being attached that the people come to the program, not being attached that the money comes in, not being attached that we have a place to be not being attached at all. That was really his focus, was to just be grateful for what we have in this moment. Because really, in this moment is all what we have in this moment. And that's the key to the external world. It's all we have. This moment right now is all we have. So if I try to eliminate that, I'm missing out on everything, this as well as that. If you're just listening on the audio, I'm moving my hands back and forth. But to have the external world, I must embrace both the internal and the external, but must remember that it all starts here in the now. So that's where consciousness ties in. To be present of what's in front of me now. To take whatever obstacle I have, rise above it, and turn it into valuable. To be able to spread joy and beauty. No matter who stands before me, I serve them. The biggest thing is to overcome judgment, judgment, judgment. Well, maybe it's my biggest thing. But to overcome judgment, 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 that's the one thing that we struggle with. And that's the one thing that'll prevent us from growing. As long as I have a shred of judgment in me, I will never truly be a light bearer. My light will never truly be pure. It will not inspire. It will not be magnetic. It will not create desire for other people to serve. It will not create patience or compassion or any of the other elements that we're searching for. So my job is to be able to eliminate, and that starts with, I'm going to go back to my original statement, it starts with me accepting me. I'm judging, okay, I accept that I'm judging. And every time I accept it, I judge a little less. Every time I catch myself, I laugh now, instead of, oh, now I think it's funny, I just judged again. So you can move it to where it's not such a judgmental thing. One time I actually started to keep a judgmental diary. Yeah, I filled that up pretty fast. I didn't keep that anymore. It was too depressing to look at, to tell you the truth. So I just think of the word judgment. But it's funny how it is one of my vices that I think it's because I grew up, I was just going to judge the Italian New Yorkers, sorry. It's their fault. I'm judgmental. Anyway.
I had someone tell me about judgment because I suffer from judgmental and from being judgmental, and so I have to work at it. I have to, try to find the better part of what I'm looking at. So that somebody told me, well, as soon as you point a finger, guess what? 3 are pointing back at you.
Right.
So just stop. Stop right now.
I was actually going to bring in a prop tonight, and I didn't. I was trying to figure out how I could put pins in a balloon without popping the balloon, because that's what it'd be like to judge ourselves. We're actually, or when we judge out, we're actually affecting inner ourselves more than anything. So, but I couldn't figure out how to make a pin go into a balloon without popping the balloon, unless I put it in there before I blew it up, but then it would have blown up. So, all right. Well, thank you all for letting me go through my notes. I'm pretty sure this is close to what I wrote. And as I said, if you want the handout, just call the office tomorrow, and they should have the PDF. I'll do it when I get home tonight. And then next time we meet, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about what we have to do in this world of internal world. There's 4 more pages of George's notes that I'm going to condense down that will complete the struggle that we have here on the external realm and the internal realm. But I want to also leave you with a challenge. I would like to challenge you to see where your focus is for the next 2 weeks. Do you focus more on this or on this? Are you able to rise above the 5 senses, to rise above your lower centers, and to manifest this cleanly and clearly? Practice non-judgmental. Practice acceptance, compassion, patience. Practice spreading love and joy. Challenge you on that. I want to challenge you for 2 weeks to see if you can remember to keep conscious of your actions, and check in 2 weeks, report back to us, okay? Excellent. We'll see you back in 2 weeks. Thank you for this evening. Have a good night.
Thank you.